So hey guys, if you haven't noticed, I don't have curtains and my cushions haven't been done yet. So this is my lovely backdrop today because this is the only place with good lighting in the daytime. So, first things first, I am here to film a interview kind of Q&A about being an author and writing The Curse of Eden, which was my first book for those of you who are not aware. I had one of my subscribers and I thank her so much for this video idea and these questions and the time she's put into reading my book and watching my channel. I appreciate you, Carol. Thank you for giving me this idea and sending in your questions. So I'm just gonna get started. So the first thing she asks is what made me first become interested in writing? And I kind of just, I've got like a cheat sheet of just kind of my brief answers, but I've always loved writing, and it wasn't like something that I was, you know, all of a sudden inspired to do. Ever since I knew how to write, I pretty much always wanted to write a book. And I remember like I have journals from when I was like 6 or 7, just me writing like the most random stories. And I don't know if they still sell them anymore, but this one like craft brand used to sell like blank books that you could make like blank storybooks almost for kids. And I'd always like make stories and do art and then gift them to other people for the holidays. And that was when I was like really young, like 8 to 10. So it's always been something I want to do, and it's always been in my heart to do it, I guess. So the second question she asks is, personally, what is the most difficult thing to write about, and what is the most satisfying thing? I would probably say that the most frustrating, difficult thing is just very personal for me, is dealing with judgment. And I feel like everyone on a certain scale handles it better or handles it worse. I wouldn't say it's like horrible, but it's definitely like really hard for me. And when someone presents something critical, it's not so much that, okay, like, thank you, I'm spelling that word wrong, so now I'm spelling it correctly, but it makes you just like second guess yourself so hard and kind of go down this like rabbit hole, I guess, of just, I'm not good enough, the writing's not good enough, I need to take it off the market. Like, there have been times that I've wanted to take my book off of the market and I just get like really embarrassed. And I have to say, like, that's mostly like a personal thing too. So like someone can say something, but it's how I'm processing it and how I'm like letting it snowball kind of in my own head into thinking that like my writing's terrible or that it's not good enough. So I'd say that's the most difficult part, along with the editing process. So like editing and formatting for me was just the worst part. And not so much editing. Editing was like okay, but I have literally avoided going back and like putting in edits, because with KDP and self-publishing, like I'll go back and I'll put in the edits, but then they're like, oh, all of a sudden, even though we've already processed this hard copy and are printing it, we can't let this one go through because your cover is 0.008 inches off. And I'm like, well, I don't have that cover anymore because I created it, I don't know, in like 2018. And I don't, you know, it's really frustrating. So that is like the second most frustrating thing. And probably the most satisfying thing is just like completing it and just seeing your book. Like, as you guys know, I have lots of videos about unboxing my proofs to my first couple of books, or I think it's just Curse of Eden, but it's the first couple copies and proofs I got. And it's just the most satisfying thing. And I think you can see it on my face if you watch those videos, and I'll make sure to like link them at the end because it's pretty funny. Like I watch, or pretty funny and like awesome, I guess, because I'll go back and watch the videos and just like my very, very honest reaction and like the smile on my face. It's like not something I could fake. So I love those videos, but that's probably the best feeling. The next question is, do you get the most inspiration from your dreams or while you're awake? And I would say while I'm awake. I have pretty trippy dreams sometimes, and they don't make any sense, and usually they're not like things that I don't know, strike inspiration in me, but I do daydream, I guess, so it's a combination of both. But I definitely would say my writing is based off of like my current life circumstances and the things I'm going through and the people I know, as well as my kind of daydream inspiration. I definitely have to sit down and like brainstorm to come up with ideas, so it's not something really like passive or subconscious, I guess. So yeah. Okay, number 4, she asks, did you plan out your story for The Curse of Eden before you started writing it? Or did you find yourself getting ideas as you worked on it? And again, I don't know, I feel like both, but at the same time, that book was very much like very quick. Like, I had a very good idea what I wanted it to be. Although, like, I have to say, I was following like the traditional arc and everything, and you know, the structure of conflict and plot and characters and everything like that. But at the same time, like, the story kind of took me, and then I went back over it, and then I was like, okay, how does this make sense? Where do I want the plot to go? The story kind of took me over once I started writing it. I had an idea, and then it just all like really came together. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful to me, is that it was genuinely from the heart at the time, and it just came together so magically. I just feel like it was meant to happen. And there's a lot of things about the book that I go back and they just make me cringe. Like, it's an old style of writing for me, but I think that there was just something that was like meant to be about it. So I have not taken it off the market. I have not gone back and done severe editing or changed the story dramatically, because I feel that, like, in a weird way, it was meant to be the way it is. So number 5 is, what was the inspiration for your characters? I feel like I kind of answered this one already. Typically from my personal life. Like, I feel that the best way to develop characters is to base them off not people, but aspects you've seen in people you know, and then kind of like make it more dramatic or emphasize it more. So that's pretty much what I did. I kind of just based it on people in my life, but my characters are actually very deep. I really wanted to make them seem real. I really wanted them to make Estrella as a character more whole. And they kind of represent like the back underlying themes of the story that people may not see at the surface. So I really kind of wanted to thread through the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in the story. So I have conquest, I have famine, I have plague, and I have death, all kind of threaded throughout the stories within certain characters in the story, or literal events that take place represent those 4 aspects. So if you get a chance to read the story over, you may notice those little pieces and the treat trail I left throughout that story for people to find later. The next question is, do you put a lot of thought into your characters? She gives some examples of family, full names, background. Again, I feel that my answer to number 5 kind of answered that, so I'm probably going to skip that one, because the answer is yes. And yeah, I draw a lot from literature I've read in the past and people in my personal life, and I try to make it as round as I can. And I think in a fiction story too, fantasy fiction especially, you really want to like dramatize and emphasize different aspects of people. They're not like normal people you'd meet, or even the main character who's more ambiguous. I really wanted my side characters to represent specific aspects of the story or of Estrella herself. So number 8, she asks, what do you hope others will take away from reading your stories? And I have to say, like, it's just, you know, I hope people love them the same way I do. And like, there have been moments, there was actually one subscriber, I didn't know really who they were. They just found me on YouTube and they read The Curse of Eden, and it was at a moment, like, I was so close to taking the book off of Amazon. I didn't feel good about it. I felt embarrassed, and I was just like, that was so long ago. I didn't want it up there anymore, and I didn't think anyone was enjoying it. And then all of a sudden this person just comes out of nowhere and DMs me like notes, pages and pages of notes that they'd written about my book, and just questions for me. And they were very much like really thinking into what the story was about, because the story is so much more than surface level, and that was my point. And I tried so hard to put that in plain sight of my readers, and I feel like they just really got it, and it was amazing. It was amazing for me, because even my own family members and friends who would read the story, not all of them understood like what I was laying beneath the surface. And so I wasn't sure when I published it if anyone would ever understand it the same way I did. And so it's not about like mass production, you know, mass number of readers. To me, it's more about knowing that some people out there are really understanding the story. And in a way, if they're understanding the story that well, I will also assume that it's helping them through a similar struggle. Because if you can really relate to a story like that, I would imagine it's something that you've been through yourself as well. Pointing out a process in growing from adolescence into adulthood, and it's something that everyone goes through, but it's tougher for some people than it is others. And so I think that this book is for people who struggle with that and don't want to grow up in a way. And I've always been enchanted by stories like Peter Pan, and I've always had a very creative mind, and so sometimes that transition's harder for people like that, and myself. And so I hope with this story being out there that it kind of almost comforts people in those feelings. And so that's kind of what I hope to come of my stories, and this story specifically. I'd say any of my stories, I just hope that people love them. And any book I write, it definitely will have deeper meaning, and I think that's the point of a book. And I hope that, you know, when people understand what I was trying to point out on underneath the surface, that's really just, it makes my soul happy, and I'm so excited. So number 9 is, how did you get your book to be known by others? I should have worked on this harder. Again, I published my book at like 18, early 19, potentially. I can't really remember. So I was just getting into college. I was just starting college. I didn't really have a lot of time to market my book at that point in my life. I tried to market it as hard as I could. You know, family, friends, people I'd gone to high school with, people I was meeting. I also tried to like get it in local bookshops. But beyond that, there wasn't much I could do, especially being self-published. When you traditionally publish, kind of some of that marketing is provided for you, especially depending on who you publish with. But for me, I was lacking that, and it was all very much on myself. But some things I did, like I really got back on YouTube and I tried to start making videos, and that's kind of trickled away. But when I was doing a lot of my writing videos originally heavily on YouTube, it's when I was publishing, because I wanted people to know me as a writing channel. I wanted people to respect my writing tips and advice and kind of, you know, be intrigued by that to read one of my stories. And I think that's actually like where I drew in a lot of my readers that I didn't know personally. Definitely, like all of them actually. So that's probably my highest recommendation if you're trying to become an author, or if you are an author and you're trying to kind of get your book better known, is to like make yourself seem credible online to folks who also want to be authors or are also avid readers, and then they'll kind of know you and respect you for your advice. So number 10 is the last question she's asking, and she said, do you have any advice for people who dream to publish a book? And I think I've said on my channel before, like genuinely my best advice is to just do it and to try to be the best you can about it. You know, don't write a book too early and don't publish too early, but you know, if you have the resources and you feel like you can, go for it. And I genuinely, that's how I feel. I wrote a book at 18 and I published it like a month into being 19, and I just graduated high school. It was the summer after I graduated high school, and I just had a great idea, and I wanted it out there, and I felt that it was done and good. And at times I go back and I kind of regret not being a better writer at the time, but because I self-published, number 1, I do have the ability to go back and change my manuscript and to edit things. And number 2, that was who I am, you know, and I've talked a lot on my channel too about going back and trying to fix your writing, and, you know, make it as good as you can and make it better to your current knowledge and the information you have and the grammar you have, like updated you know what I mean? And you can't always do that because it's like its own thing. Like I remember I've always had diaries and journals. Like it's always very much helped me to vent. Sometimes I don't want to talk to people about things. I want to write them. And I think that makes sense because I'm an author. But I remember I used to go back in like high school, and I'd go back to like my middle school journals, and I'd be like, oh, I spelled that wrong, like scribble, and then I'd write it correctly. And then I had to stop myself, and I was like, that was like me in the moment. Like I can't go back and fix that. Like that is what it is, and that's kind of what makes it beautiful. So I just kind of left it alone. It is a published book, not my personal diary. So I go back, and if there's grammatical things or spelling errors, if I find any, I always fix that stuff. But as far as like, oh, I don't like that character, I'm just gonna get rid of her. Or like, oh, that plot, like could be changed a little bit in a way that I like more now. Like stuff like that, I really try to not do, because it's not being true to who I was in that moment. My reading group for that book and who I'm trying to reach out to, they're also that age. So in a way, it's like that language may not make as much sense to me now, but it may make more sense to them because they're at that age too. It's like when you go back and read John Milton or Dante's Inferno and you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about. You know what I mean? I don't want my writing to come across to a 17-year-old girl that way. So that's kind of my best advice, and I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you, Carol, again for sending me these questions. And this is actually for a class as far as I understand it, and she reached out asking if she could ask me some questions because she wants to be an author herself, it sounds like, which is so awesome. And I'm so just happy you reached out, and it makes my heart warm to know that people think of me. And I remember thinking of my favorite authors and how cool it would be if they'd help me out, or if they would reach out to me or I could reach out to them, and they just weren't as accessible. And so I really tried to make myself accessible with this, because I think it's really awesome that I'm inspiring other people to do exactly what I've been inspired to do. So thank you, Carol. Please give this a thumbs up if you would like to see more writing videos. I know I've been really sparse on them lately. It's just because I haven't been writing much. I'm not super inspired to write a novel lately. And I'm also I'm lacking on time, especially with my trailer project, if you guys have watched my last video. So yes, I hope you enjoyed. It's nice to get back to what my channel used to be about, and I'll see you in my next video, guys. Bye.